Okay, so first of all, I wanted to go through quickly how to set up IntelliJ to run and debug your app on a physical device. So first of all, you have to create a new configuration. So you go under this pull down here, and you can add a new configuration. And we want to add a new Android application. You can call it whatever you want. I called mine physical. And the only thing you have to change here is you want it to go to the USB device. Right? So that's what I did on this one. I'm going to the USB device here. And then you save that. I'm going to delete this guy. So I have my physical device. I called it displaying to the USB device. And the hardest part that I had on Windows was getting the Windows to recognize my device. Now, you probably won't have that issue if you're already syncing your Android device to your computer. You guys that own Android devices, you probably won't have this issue. But this was the school's Samsung Galaxy Note 2, and what you have to do is install the USB driver for that particular device. So there's a page that I put a link to on our Canvas page, and we need to find the driver from this OEM drivers table. So you find the phone that you have. Mine's a Samsung, so I go to this link, Samsung, support downloads, and mine's a Note 2, and mine happens to be on Verizon, so I click here, and it will eventually go to the download service, and it's very confusing here. It's in the downloads, and you have to select this exe down here. So that downloading that and running it will install the drivers on your computer, and then you have to tell it where those drivers are. So you go to Windows, Computer, right-click, Properties, go to Device Manager, find your phone over here on the left, and here's my Samsung Android phone, and you can right-click, because this probably won't have the drivers there, and say Update Driver Software, and then find where it installed it. And in my case, it installed it on my C drive under Program Files and Samsung. So all you have to do is select the USB driver folder, and it will find the right one for your phone. So just hit OK. That will update the drivers, and your phone then should be able to be seen by IntelliJ. All right? So once you've done that, I can select my physical configuration and click Run. And the other problem, and it should launch it on the device. Okay, in my case, mine is working. One problem that you might see, though, is we started building ours for Android 4.3. My device only supports Android 4.1.2. So I had to go and into the tools, I had to manage the SDK and download the 4.1.2 set of SDKs. Okay. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this particular phone I have doesn't support it, so I know exactly. Get a new one. So probably the new Note 3 has it, but I don't have any way of getting those. So we have to download that, the SDK, and then if you change your under the file project structure, you then would change the build target. Instead of 4.3, it would show up here, and you'd select Android 4.1.2, all right, in your project structure. Now, if you then run it like this, to my physical device, you'll get an error saying installed failed older SDK. So the problem was when this project was first created, IntelliJ created this manifest file for us. And if we look at the Android manifest file, this describes how the application is going to run. And we'll be in here again later in the week to create a new intent. But this is the SDK version. This line has the minimum, and 4.3 is SDK version 18. 4.1.2 is SDK version 16. So we have to change that SDK version in order for this to run. And then we run it, it'll rebuild it, and it launches my app on my Android. Isn't that great? Google. There's a mapping between these numbers and the 4 point whatever. Yeah, they might have it. I just closed mine. I just closed it. Let's go see that. So here's the API version number here. So mine is 4.12. That's the 16 that I need. And if I went all the way back to 1.5, it would be API 3, which I'm not going to support. I'm still at least in the 4s. That's pretty good. So forget everybody that's less than 4. We're going to stick with this. All right, is that better? All right, any questions on that? Now we can actually test it on the live device. We can do all kinds of fun stuff with that. So one thing we have to do before we can add a new activity is that we need to be able to save information when an activity gets destroyed. All right, because we're going to be going to a new screen, the screen that was very often by the Android operating system. What's interesting, if I just rotate my phone, application and relaunches the application, which seems silly to me that it does that, but it destroys it back through whole on create system here to recreate the app in its new view, in its new layout. All right, so there are two different methods that we need to override in order to save some text. And in our particular case, what would be useful to save in our little project here? Height and weight, right? Something that the user has already typed in, and maybe their selection on the radio button. So maybe 3 things that we might want to save. All right. So to do that, we have to override some methods. And they are called onSaveInstanceState and onRestoreInstanceState. So we're going to put those, let's put those here above my toasted. And we use the @override because these are going to override the parent's method. And what does that little tag do for us again? Forces the override. It forces an error if I don't name this correctly. That too, right? So this one takes a bundle, which is basically a structure that holds all the information about this particular application. And if we look in our onCreate, that takes the same information. It takes this bundle of the saved instance state. All right, so onSaveInstanceState. And the first thing we do, and with most of these applications, most of these methods that we override, almost always we want to call the parent's version of this first so that it sets up everything that we don't touch, right? Because overriding a method, we're only overriding a piece of it, right? We might be changing one little property of the of that method. But the main method, how would we call the parents method of this? Just like in Ruby, right? We're going to call super dot, and then the on save instance state, and we're going to pass it the save instance state that we got as well. So that's the first thing we want to do, is to call the parents version of that. Then we can do our own stuff, and what we can do is, with this saved instance state, this is what they call a bundle. It's just a structure, and we can call some methods on this to save some data from our project, from our activity that we have here. So there's we call the save instance state. We can call some methods, and we want to save something. So instead of getting, we're going to call the put methods. So we're going to call put, and we can put something like a Boolean, right? We want to put a Boolean out to this bundle so that it saves it by the operating system. It's going to save these data points. So what's our Boolean that we have in this app? What is the one thing that we're saving that's the radio button, right? So the American BMI versus the world BMI. Now, I was going to change it over the weekend to go to metric, but I decided I had other stuff to do. So this put Boolean takes two parameters, a key and a value. So it's like saving something in a hash inside of this bundle object. So we give it a key, and it makes sense to use the same key that we have in our project. And American.
We don't get a government, it's close enough.
American is the key. And then how do I get that value? How am I storing that radio button? Well, let's go back and look. When I do the radio button clicked, I check and save in this American variable, which is a private Boolean, whether or not they checked that checkbox, right? I only care which one is checked. So I'm going to just pass in the value of American. So that's my Boolean. I'm saving one value to this. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to do this 3 times. Instead of put Boolean now, I want to put a string to show you how to do that. And the string might be pounds in is what I called it. Let's see, I called it different here, didn't I? So let's go look at my 2 strings. I've got a height in and weight in. Those aren't strings. No, I used something else. Those are the doubles. And I could use that, but I'm going to save the string. So I'm just going to call them height in and weight in. Height, because this is just a key. I can call it whatever I want. Height in and weight in. And these are both going to be put strings. And then the value, I want to go and get the value that's currently in the edit text on the view itself. So how do we get the value from a particular edit text? Well, we used this get text, right? We used the whatever the edit text. This is weight in dot get text. So my height in is going to be height in, and that's an edit text view dot get text, and that goes and gets the current value of the text, and then I want to call toString on it. But this, I want to get the most recent stuff, because if they're typing in there and they change the rotation in the middle of typing, I want to get what's currently there on the screen, right? So there's the height in, and then I have the weight in dot get text dot toString. All right, so this is saving all three pieces of my data into this bundle, this structure that the operating system manages. So then when it restores this particular view, it's going to call this next function that I called on restore instance state. Yes?
What do we need to do the same for American in that case?
I am. What do you mean?
This is the most recent, because that's the variable versus pulling.
That's true. Trying to think,
Maybe put it to do.
how would you click and rotate at the same time? That would be a little harder.
It's like if you had already clicked and then you're rotating it, what's the default value?
Yeah.
It's like if you have click world, it's going to default. Well, I guess it would. Coach do the same.
I'm thinking that the OS is going to fire off my click first,
Yeah.
and then the rotate, or I'm going to rotate and then fire off the click. I'm not sure. I mean, we could do that. It's we just have to do this this value here. So we could call our RDO American is checked, right? That would be getting the value straight from the text field. I mean the so that would fix that problem. Interesting problem. I never thought of that being an issue, but it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. We might as well get the most recent stuff, right? So we need to override. The next one is called on restore instance state, and it gets the same thing, a bundle. Oops, a bundle, and we'll call it the saved instance state as well, just so we're consistent. All right, and so when we're overriding somebody else's method, what should we do first? Call the super, right? So we're going to call super dot on restore instance state. We're going to pass it our saved instance state that we have. All right, and now all we have to do is get those three values from this bundle. So my American variable, I'm going to restore it to set whatever was in my saved instance state, and instead of putting, what do you think I'm going to call? Get. All right, I'm going to get a Boolean. And what is the key that I'm getting? It's that I stored it in. It's called American. All right. And then I need to get my pounds in, which is that's the text field that I've named it. That's the edit text property. It's called weight. Sorry, my one that I did at home is weight in, right, is my edit text, and I'm going to call my saved instance state dot get string. And I'm going to get the value from weight in. All right, so that is a string, but how do I change the value that's on the screen? I need to save that back into the edit text area back on the screen. All right, so this gets me the text. Right, I do the set text, right? So on here, I can call, instead of assigning it, I'm going to call waitin.setText on the value that this is returning, which is a string, and that will put the text in the text field. Then I copy and paste that, and thank you. Height and height in. And now I'm setting the two values that were stored in this bundle structure back into the edit fields. Whatever. HK, it's all the same. Right? Details don't matter in programming, do they? No. They change
The
it.
first step is change it from X to metrics and K for Q.
There you go. I need to do that. All right, so I've got my two methods. I'm overriding them, and these will be called, I don't have to tie them to anything because the operating system will automatically call these methods when my activity is going to be closed, or when, for instance, on a rotation. All right, so let's,
Does it save it to the actual system?
yeah, the system takes care of these things.
Instead of like the small hash word
Yeah,
individual application?
that's from what I understand. That's what it does, yes. And it could destroy your views just because it needs more memory. It's very aggressive at destroying your views. So you have to take all that into account. You can't guarantee that your view is going to be around ever. So you have to save your stuff constantly, and it'll get recreated constantly. That's why they're so slow, in my opinion. But anyway, it just doesn't make sense to destroy it completely on a rotation like that. That seems a little hardcore. All right, so let's run this in the debugger, not on the physical, so I can show you how to rotate my tablet on my virtual device.
I guess they probably do that
Oops.
in case they want to tell you something completely different. When you're
Yes. Now you can, and you can on a rotation like this, check that the orientation has changed, and then change the layout file that's being done. Right? You can change all that stuff, and you'll see that we might have to do that. Right. Exactly. So you'd have a different layout page for orientation instead.
I get that would make sense in that case, but well, they only have so much screen space.
Right.
So I mean, it would make sense that it's like if you rotate it.
I don't know. Some apps are going to work fine without destroying them. Probably not. You'll see how I fixed it on mine here.
Start making square pockets.
So I forgot, I'm going to run the debug version of it. Square, that's right. Well, tablets are mostly square. But all right, I'm going to run the debug version of this. And I have breakpoints in here so we can see these trigger when I rotate my tablet. All right, so here we go.
I'll put in some values.
Yeah, I got to have some values, right? So I've got 80 and 160. All right, and then I'm going to rotate it. And to rotate it, I hit Control F12. There's no...
You also hit 7 or 9 on the number pad.
Oh, I don't have a number pad. How do you get the number pad? Oh, really? Ah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Control F12, so that rotated it. And you can see it has nothing yet. It hasn't drawn anything. It's saying, I want to save the previous state. So it's going to go through and save my pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and let it do that. And then it's going to come back and restore my information. So it's going to call this super. And now I've got my body mass indicator rotated. Now, what's the problem with this?
You don't have your app.
Right? The app is gone. So we'll fix that later. But notice how my data is still there. So I rotate again, back to where it was. It changes, calls my on-save state, which is right. And then it will call my on-restore state, which is also right. And it'll redraw it eventually, and I'll have my saved states here. Hey, look at that. Yes, we do have to put a scroll bar. Yes. Which is interesting. All right, any questions on that? All right, so let's do the scroll bar so that we can get this fixed. And then, boy, intense, we're never going to get to our second view. We'll do that tomorrow. The scroll is all done in the layout. All right, so our layout here needs to have a scroll view. Okay, so here's the scroll view. This is, we want a vertical scroll view so that this can scroll up and down like this, right? If it's too long when we rotate it, we want to be able to at least scroll it. So I need a scroll view in my project. So the problem is that since I didn't do this in the beginning, this gets to be a little bit painful. So I'm going to add a scroll view to my project. And this layout doesn't let me put this as the parent to my linear layout. Okay, I can't drag and drop this so that my linear layout is inside my scroll view. At least I couldn't on my Mac. Yep. There's no way to do that. I've tried one at a time. It doesn't work. Scroll view only lets you have one child for its container. So that one child is going to be this entire linear layout. So in this case, I can't use my GUI to do that. I go straight into my text. And let's look at this. The scroll view now needs to contain my linear layout. It's like moving a div to be the parent of a child. So I'm going to cut this out, move it to the top, so that it surrounds my linear layout. Take away its closing brackets here so that I have a closing scroll view at the very end after my linear layout. All right, so that's part of it. Now my linear layout is inside of my scroll view. All right, so the next problem is that the main container in my XML file has to have this Android namespace associated with the scroll view. So all we have to do is move this Android XMLNS. This is the namespace tag. I move that up here. And that fixes everything. All right, so now I can go back to my design view, and I relook at it. Now everything is inside of my scroll view, and I've got a nice scroll view here. Isn't that cool? So that's really all it is. It wasn't too hard. Let's run it. And try to rotate now. Come on. These are so slow. All right, so let's put something in it. And rotate.
Take the breaks out.
Did I what?
The code breaks.
Oh, I ran instead of debugged it, so. It's just really slow. Because yours is faster. Somehow. There we go. See, it's working. So now I can click and drag. Theoretically. There we go. Clicking and dragging. Yay! Look at that.
Oh, and it sets your entire view to a variable.
Yeah, and the problem with that is...
Set it to fill parent.
Right. I need to set this to fill parent instead. So my scroll view, I need to set the property of my scroll view to my scroll view, sorry. My scroll view. I have to change this one. Should be fill parent instead. All right, so let's run it again. That should fix that problem. Now it'll be all the way across the screen. Theoretically. Come on. Yay! Look at that. Is that beautiful or what? Beautiful stuff. All right. Any questions on that? All right. So I got tired of black. So there's another theme. They have some different themes that you can associate with your application. And that's all done in the manifest file. So let's open our manifest file. And we can add a theme property. Sorry, let me get it up here. So on my application here, I can add another property called Android theme. And the theme I want is going to be at Android : style. / theme.hollow.light. All right, and you can see there's a couple of these here. Hollow. Oh, that's weird. What happened? Huh. That was weird. Yeah. So there's a light theme and then the default theme, which is black. So I want the light. All right? So if I change that and run it now, I'll have a white background and black text on the white background. Probably. You're probably right. So here we go. So now I like that better. It looks nicer to me. All right, and then one last thing. Ryan asked how we can change this name here. So if we look at that, yeah, it was. So I told you to Google it, and you didn't. So let's. What I can do. The way I figured it out was I used the searching here, and I searched for hello Android, right? Because that is what is on the screen right here. So it's got to be a string somewhere, right? And I'm going to look in the whole project just to show you some IntelliJ stuff. So here's, this is part of the package, so I don't want to change the package names yet. So those are fine. Here is one that's in a resource, and then here's 3 that are in a XML file. The manifest, which I don't want to change the package, and the build, which is the project name, which is an IntelliJ thing. I don't care about that. And finally, down in our resources, there's a strings file here that lets me change, and this is where I put my strings instead of hard coding them. So I can call this my diabetes, my health application, right? So now when I run it again, this up here will change to health application. Yeah, if you want to. That would be funny. You make him talk. You might have to pay a royalty for his picture. I don't think so. All right, so now it says health application, so a little nicer, right? All right, any questions on that? Google. You want him to speak when he talks. Diabetes. All right, so maybe tomorrow we will start and create our next logging page. I'm going to log weight, and you guys are going to log the sugar readings. Okay, so mine's going to be a little different than yours, so you have to do your own project. I think so. All right, that's it. Any questions?